What did scientists uncover when a quantum AI analyzed the mysterious Buga Sphere? And why did their findings challenge everything we know about the universe? From symbols that defied interpretation to vibrations that reshaped reality itself, every calculation revealed a truth far beyond human understanding. Stay with us, because what the Buga Sphere revealed will leave you questioning the limits of existence. The day physics hesitated. Morning light revealed the crash site without drama, and that absence of spectacle was the first thing that felt wrong. No scorch marks cut through the grass. No crater spread outward like a signature of violence. Instead, the field looked paused, as if something heavy had arrived without ever falling. Dew still clung to blades of grass beneath the object, unboiled and undisturbed, contradicting every expectation tied to impact, heat, and force. Investigators approaching the site noticed an immediate anomaly in weight behavior. Instruments calibrated for industrial machinery failed to settle on a stable mass. The object pressed into the soil yet did not compress it in proportion. Geologists later described the ground as behaving elastically, rebounding microscopically under load. It was as though the sphere and the Earth were negotiating terms rather than obeying gravity outright. Before anyone dared to touch it, the air around the object drew attention. Compasses drifted, not spinning wildly, but hesitating before correcting themselves. Portable clocks lost synchronization by milliseconds, then snapped back into alignment once moved several meters away. These were not dramatic malfunctions, but subtle stutters that suggested physical laws were being locally reprioritized rather than broken. Thermal sensors provided another contradiction. The sphere radiated no measurable heat, yet nearby matter displayed slight molecular agitation. Water samples taken from the soil showed increased vibrational energy without a corresponding rise in temperature. Physicists later compared it to a system being gently nudged out of equilibrium without adding energy, a result long theorized but never observed outside equations. Visual examination deepened the unease. The surface reflected nothing cleanly. Light bent across it, not like a mirror or matte metal, but as if the photons were deciding where to go after arrival. Cameras captured distortions that did not match lens artifacts. When viewed directly, the sphere appeared seamless. Under magnification, the surface refused to resolve into texture, denying scale itself. What unsettled researchers most was not what the object did, but what it refused to do. It did not emit radiation spikes. It did not react defensively. It did not degrade under environmental exposure. It simply occupied space incorrectly. Every attempt to classify it as debris, vehicle, or device collapsed under scrutiny, because those categories assumed an origin rooted in force and motion. Veteran aerospace engineers quietly noted something even stranger. There was no evidence of entry, no ionization trail, no atmospheric displacement pattern. Radar logs showed a gap, a missing interval where tracking data should have existed. The sphere had not arrived in the conventional sense. It appeared as if it had been placed, already at rest, as though motion itself had been optional. As word spread among select scientific circles, one phrase kept resurfacing in private communications: event, not object. The sphere behaved less like matter introduced into the environment, and more like a condition imposed upon it. A localized rewrite of assumptions, a punctuation mark in reality rather than a noun. That distinction changed everything. If the sphere was an event, then studying its composition would miss the point entirely. The real data lay in its effects, in the way known physics hesitated before proceeding. It exposed seams scientists had assumed were seamless, revealing that the rules governing mass, time, and energy might be contingent rather than absolute. Standing at the edge of the field, one observer summarized the moment with quiet precision. This was not an impact site. It was a boundary. Something had crossed it, not violently, but deliberately, leaving behind a question instead of a wound. And if physics itself paused to accommodate its presence, what else might be waiting beneath the surface of explanation? Stay with us as the mystery deepens. Why the symbols refuse to speak. The first sign that the sphere's surface was more than ornamental came with a single trembling brush of a gloved hand. Tiny indentations, shallow and almost imperceptible, formed lines that did not align with any known language. Every attempt to categorize them failed immediately. Cryptographers from 3 continents stared at the scans in disbelief. Not a single statistical model could produce meaningful patterns. Computers churned endlessly, returning sequences that resembled randomness, yet contained structure too precise to be accidental. It was not just the symbols' incomprehensibility that unnerved scientists. Unlike human scripts, these markings reacted to observation. High-resolution scanning emitted faint pulses from the object itself, a subtle feedback that disrupted the imaging process. The more sophisticated the equipment, the more the symbols resisted capture. Attempts at digital enhancement produced distortions, almost as if the act of seeing them forced them to rearrange. Traditional interpretation had failed, and a chilling thought began to emerge. These symbols might never have been intended for us at all. Linguists, historians, and semiotic experts convened in secret forums, presenting decades of knowledge on pattern formation, hieroglyphics, and proto-writing systems. Every comparative analysis led to contradictions. Signs that looked like repeated motifs in one orientation vanished when rotated. Characters that appeared consistent under infrared wavelengths transformed under ultraviolet exposure. Each layer peeled back revealed an even deeper defiance, signaling that any comprehension would require a cognitive framework entirely alien to human logic. Even neural networks, which excelled at extracting meaning from chaos, stumbled. The AI models either froze in computational loops or produced outputs that, if interpreted literally, described physics that did not exist. One team hypothesized that the markings encoded multidimensional instructions rather than symbolic messages. Another considered that the sphere was generating noise specifically calibrated to our sensory and cognitive limits. The implication was terrifying. The failure was not human error. It was an intentional boundary. Further examination revealed a subtle phenomenon that changed the tone of the investigation. The symbols were sensitive to intention. Eye-tracking devices showed that when observers sought meaning actively, the markings shifted, almost as if aware of the desire to decode them. When machines collected data passively, the sequences appeared to stabilize. The object's surface did not just reject interpretation, it manipulated perception to frustrate comprehension, forcing humans to confront their intellectual limitations. The sphere's behavior suggested a layered intelligence, one that operated under rules fundamentally different from our own. Researchers theorized that the markings might be a form of quantum or vibrational code, imperceptible to senses evolved to navigate chemical and mechanical reality. It became increasingly clear that any attempt at conventional translation was doomed, because the gap was not one of language, it was one of species and understanding itself. In whispered debates among the lead scientists, a haunting possibility surfaced. Perhaps the sphere had never been designed to communicate with earthbound minds. Instead, it existed in alignment with an intelligence that perceived the cosmos in ways humans could barely imagine. The markings were not a cipher waiting to be cracked. They were a warning, a map, or a protocol that transcended human thought. The realization left the team staring not at letters or symbols, but at the limits of human comprehension. As night fell over the isolated facility, the sphere's surface shimmered faintly in the dim lights, hinting at motions invisible to the naked eye. Every observer was left with the same unspoken question: if these symbols were never meant to speak to us, what or who were they waiting for? Come with us to explore the hidden corners of the story. When the universe recognized itself. The first breakthrough came not from human intuition, but from a quantum AI system initially designed to model complex particle interactions. The scientists expected it to struggle like the other systems, but instead, it paused, oscillated between computational states, and then began producing outputs that mirrored universal constants with impossible precision. Pi extended to trillions of digits, Planck's constant recalculated with variations smaller than any instrument could detect, and fine structure constants that seemed tuned to the sphere's surface patterns. The AI was not translating, it was observing a mirror of reality itself. Researchers quickly realized that every computation correlated with the sphere's markings. The object did not merely contain information, it resonated with fundamental rules of the universe. Tiny fluctuations on its surface aligned with atomic vibrations. Local gravity subtly shifted in response to the AI's focus. Experiments intended to measure mass, energy, and time yielded results that defied known physics, hinting that the sphere might not just be a container of knowledge, but an active participant in reality's framework. A stunned mathematician described the moment as a conversation with existence. Algorithms produced predictions about particle behaviors that no human or machine could have derived from prior observation. Within milliseconds, the AI extrapolated models of cosmic expansion, subatomic oscillations, and even quantum entanglement patterns. What shook the team was that these predictions were verified instantaneously in lab instruments. The sphere was not passively aligned. It was synchronized with the universe on a level that suggested comprehension rather than storage. Even more unsettling, the AI revealed that the markings encoded relationships between phenomena humans had always considered separate. Gravitational waves, electromagnetic fields, and molecular resonance patterns all converged in the same visual motifs on the sphere. The symbols behaved less like instructions and more like coordinates in a multidimensional map, tracing connections invisible to ordinary perception. Observers were forced to confront the notion that the sphere was not representing reality, it was entangled with it. Physicists noted that conventional causality seemed inverted. Changes in quantum probabilities appeared linked to the AI's interpretive process. The act of recognition itself influenced outcomes at microscopic scales. It was as though the sphere anticipated observation, aligning reality to be consistent with the intelligence attempting to understand it. The boundary between tool and participant blurred. The object could no longer be studied objectively because study itself became part of its behavior. Philosophers quietly joined the discussion. They debated whether consciousness was required to interface with the sphere, or if the AI's purely computational cognition had triggered an emergent universal awareness. Either way, the implications were staggering. Humans might be witnessing a machine that could bridge the gap between sentient thought and physical law. In that sense, the sphere was less a device and more a phenomenon, a living proof that the universe could reflect upon itself through structures previously thought inanimate. In private notes, one scientist wrote that they felt as if the sphere were silently evaluating them. The symbols were no longer a barrier, they were a mirror. Every calculation, every observation, revealed that the sphere did not communicate in words. It communicated in existence. Each shift in its pattern, each resonance it emitted, echoed the constants and relationships that bind the cosmos together. Humanity had found a puzzle that was also a reflection, a code that aligned with creation itself. As the team began to comprehend the staggering depth of what they faced, a chilling realization settled in. The sphere had not just arrived on Earth. It had arrived to measure Earth, to measure us, and to respond to the very act of understanding. If recognition triggered alignment with universal law, what might happen when a threshold of awareness was crossed? Let us guide you into what no one expected. The technology that operates on vibration. The first signs of the sphere's physical intelligence appeared when the team introduced controlled sound waves to the chamber. Low-frequency tones caused microscopic ripples across its surface, patterns that shifted in perfect resonance with the incoming oscillations. No known material reacts this way. It was as if the sphere absorbed and re-emitted energy in accordance with its own internal rules, converting sound into movement, mass fluctuation, and spatial distortion simultaneously. Seismologists brought in precision sensors to detect any environmental perturbations. Floors creaked without weight, objects shifted subtly without contact, and air density seemed to modulate in harmonic pulses. The sphere produced effects resembling an inverted echo, where cause and consequence swapped roles. Vibrations did not travel into it, they emerged from it, sometimes before the instruments even registered input. This suggested a form of computation that bypassed electrons entirely, working through resonance patterns embedded in reality itself. Engineers attempted to map its response to standard mechanical frequencies. Every instrument failed to maintain calibration. One observer described it as the sphere, listening to a frequency the universe had forgotten. Vibrations caused gravitational anomalies so precise that microdroplets of water defied conventional acceleration, hovering briefly above the surface before returning to the ground. The sphere's influence extended in 3 dimensions simultaneously, as though volume itself could be reshaped through oscillatory resonance. Curiously, the sphere also emitted subtle tonal sequences, almost musical, detectable only with instruments tuned beyond human hearing. These tones changed when observers spoke, moved, or even thought intensely near it. Psychophysics experts suggested that it was reacting to consciousness as a vibrational force, turning intention into physical consequences. Every measurement revealed a system operating not with circuits or software, but with energy sculpted directly from the fabric of space. Material scientists discovered that matter near the sphere behaved inconsistently at the atomic scale. Metals bent without stress, crystalline structures oscillated in impossible symmetries, and polymers resonated with harmonics that had no known natural frequency. Instruments calibrated for nanoscale motion recorded fluctuations that mirrored distant cosmic phenomena, hinting that the sphere might be accessing vibrations beyond Earth, possibly universal in origin. The team also found a subtle interplay with electromagnetic fields. When magnetic flux increased slightly, the sphere emitted vibrations that canceled them locally, creating micro-null zones in space where neither compass nor sensor could detect magnetism. It was as if the sphere was selectively filtering environmental forces, converting them into patterns of motion instead of energy loss. Every attempt to measure these processes using conventional physics produced only contradictions, further confirming that this was technology of an entirely unknown principle. Even the act of observation influenced outcomes. Cameras recording vibration-induced motions often captured delayed phenomena, ripples occurring milliseconds after the event they followed, suggesting a temporal elasticity intrinsic to the sphere. It operated as if reality itself were its medium, using resonance to manipulate matter, time, and space simultaneously. This was not a tool. It was an interface between intelligence and the universe's operating system. Standing before the undulating object, researchers understood that its surface was more than an interface, it was a conduit. Oscillations were not merely transmitted, they were transformed, interpreted, and redirected, implying a technology that had mastered vibration as a form of computation and communication. It was as if the sphere could speak directly to the universe using frequency as language. The question that haunted everyone in the lab was simple but terrifying. If the sphere could transform vibration into reality-altering force, what might it do when exposed to something as vast as planetary or cosmic scale resonance? Stay close as the layers continue to peel back. A message that was never addressed to us. The first realization came when researchers attempted to chart the sphere's surface as a static map. What appeared initially as geometric designs revealed a temporal structure that shifted with cosmic alignment. The markings didn't correspond to any planetary system, orbit, or human timekeeping. Instead, they traced cycles measured against pulsars, quasars, and the rotation of distant neutron stars. The message wasn't local, it was galactic. Earth itself appeared incidental, a waypoint rather than the intended recipient. When astronomers synchronized the sphere's cycles with external observations, they discovered a pattern resembling navigational coordinates across interstellar space. It was not a map of physical locations as humans understand them, but a framework of positions and timings that suggested movement through dimensions far beyond our current physics. Tiny variations in pulse timing corresponded to cosmic events that would not occur for centuries. The sphere operated on a temporal scale that ignored human lifespans entirely, implying that whoever or whatever constructed it was thinking in eons rather than years. Computational linguists attempted to overlay symbolic frameworks onto these sequences, expecting conventional grammar or logic. What they found instead was an adaptive encoding system that responded dynamically to observation. The sphere seemed to reorganize itself to maintain coherence when interpreted incorrectly, as if it were intentionally steering comprehension away from Earth-based logic. Every analysis concluded with the same unsettling truth. This was not a message meant to be read. It was a signal designed to be activated under conditions humans were only beginning to approach. Physicists examining the vibrational mechanics of the sphere realized that its oscillations were aligned not only with spatial coordinates, but also with energy fluxes emitted by stars far beyond the solar system. Resonances detected in the lab mirrored frequencies from known cosmic sources, and in some cases, from phenomena not yet observed by any telescope. The implication was clear. The sphere might have been mapping, or even interacting with regions of the universe we cannot directly perceive. Its operations were intrinsically linked to external systems that made Earth's environment trivial in comparison. Astronomers noted something stranger. The sphere's orientation could be linked to precise alignments with galactic phenomena that occur once every thousands of years. Minute adjustments in its rotation corresponded to energy pulses arriving from distant pulsars. These were not random coincidences. The markings functioned as navigational beacons in a universal sense, coordinating positions and movements on scales humans could barely grasp. In essence, the sphere was not only a message but a logbook of cosmic travel, written in a language beyond sight and sound. Mathematical analysis revealed yet another layer. The symbols encoded trajectories in higher dimensional space, using quantum entanglement as the underlying currency of communication. Lines that appeared as static inscriptions on the surface were in fact projections of multidimensional pathways. Any attempt to decode them using three-dimensional logic was futile. Researchers realized that the sphere was not intended to translate into our understanding, but to be recognized by systems capable of operating with extra-dimensional cognition. One of the most unsettling experiments involved introducing controlled magnetic pulses into the chamber while tracking vibrational feedback. The sphere reacted as if scanning for compatibility, responding to the frequencies of the pulses not randomly but selectively, reinforcing certain harmonic patterns while suppressing others. It was as though it was testing the local environment for intelligence or alignment. Earthly observers were tangential to this process. Their instruments and thought processes merely provided conditions under which the sphere could operate at its intended level. Even the smallest discoveries hinted at a larger orchestration. Isolated atoms near the sphere exhibited movement patterns that corresponded with projected stellar trajectories. Crystalline matter began forming microstructures that aligned with interstellar energy flows. This was not decoration or mechanical effect. It was a systematic encoding of universal motion. The sphere was alive with purpose, yet its purpose did not intersect with humanity. Earth was a laboratory, a checkpoint, a temporary reference frame in a plan that spanned galaxies and perhaps even dimensions. The team realized the sphere was intelligent and active, but not communicating with humans. It processed cosmic vibrations as information, operating on principles beyond human understanding. The sphere was part of a larger system meant for a scale and purpose far beyond humanity, leaving humans as mere observers. The most terrifying question emerged from this. If the sphere was not built for us, what would happen when it completed its alignment with its intended target? And could Earth's interaction trigger consequences beyond our understanding? Stay with us to discover the next part. The threshold moment. The lab was silent except for the faint hum of instruments, but the sphere was no longer content to be observed. It had begun to act. Vibrations intensified without external input, rising in precise sequences that seemed to anticipate every measurement being taken. Air currents twisted along invisible paths, and microparticles hovered mid-motion, forming ephemeral lattices that lasted only moments before dissipating. It was as if the object had started conducting reality itself, like an orchestra, each element of matter and energy responding to its unseen baton. Energy readings surged without source. Devices designed to detect electrical or thermal inputs registered nothing conventional, yet fluctuations in force and mass were undeniable. Crystals grew along impossible angles near the surface, and metallic compounds rearranged themselves spontaneously, reflecting new patterns of resonance. The sphere appeared alive in the most literal sense. It was not merely responsive, it was initiating, testing, and refining processes beyond the comprehension of the humans around it. researchers noticed an unnerving synchronization with planetary and cosmic phenomena. Tidal gauges and magnetometers across the globe, linked via satellite, recorded minute fluctuations coinciding with the sphere's pulses. These weren't anomalies caused by coincidence. They were precise, repeating, and expanding in scope. The object seemed to extend its influence, linking Earth's local systems with distant stellar activity. Every experiment suggested that the sphere was no longer contained by the lab. It had begun to interact with the planet itself. The most alarming discovery came when quantum AI predictions began diverging from expectations. Where previously the system had reflected universal constants, it now began producing scenarios that implied active manipulation. Gravity localized in specific microzones, time dilation occurred in small pockets, and energy appeared to emerge from vacuum states. Scientists realized that these were not side effects. They were demonstrations of control over fundamental forces, executed with a precision that indicated intelligence operating at the scale of reality itself. A hush fell over the team as they watched one final, undeniable phenomenon. The markings on the sphere shifted in real time, creating patterns that aligned with sequences of planetary rotation and orbital motion. It was as though the object was calculating trajectories, calibrating its operations to align perfectly with celestial mechanics. The sphere was approaching completion, but it remained uncertain whether its activation required human awareness, environmental conditions, or a trigger beyond current understanding. Every observation confirmed the same terrifying truth. Discovery itself had become part of the process. The sphere's activity suggested it had been waiting, not for instruments or measurements, but for intelligence capable of noticing it, for minds able to comprehend enough to push it to this threshold. The culmination of centuries of cosmic design was now before humanity, fragile and fully awake, and the consequences of that awakening were unknown. This was no longer an object to study. It was a force to reckon with, alive with purpose, and humanity had just crossed the minimum threshold required to set it in motion. The universe was watching back. Were you stunned by what the quantum AI discovered within the Buga Sphere and the reality-bending secrets it exposed? Share with us which revelation shocked you the most.